Do you ever just get bored with music sometimes? Do those 4-to-the-floor beats lead to high blood pressure and bouts of constipation? Well, here's 5 fantastically weird albums that'll reinvigorate your appreciation of sugar-coated pop and clear out any remaining party guests at 5 a.m. Mike Patton is held in high regard in the rock and metal community, and is often considered one of the most talented and versatile vocalists around. While best known for his work with Faith No More, Patton is and always has been a big fan of experimental music and has been involved with his other band, the impossible to categorise Mr. Bungle, for years prior to joining Faith No More. In 1996, Patton was offered the opportunity to release some of his own solo work via avant-garde legend John Zorn's Zadig label. He had become friends with Zorn while he was producing Mr. Bungle's self-titled album in 1991, eventually joining his bands in live improvisations, providing voice effects, and taking part in several of Zorn's other projects such as Naked City. Now, for anyone familiar with the work of John Zorn, it may not be hugely surprising to find that Patton's solo recordings weren't exactly conventional. In fact, even fans of Mr. Bungle, a band that can flawlessly flip genres at high speed, combining everything from ska to death metal, struggled with the album and its contents. Adult Themes for Voice consists of 34 tracks, spread over 43 minutes, of nothing but sounds created by Mike Patton's voice, a microphone, and occasionally metal bins and running water. Every sound on the album was recorded by Patton in hotel rooms while touring with Faith No More. While the rest of the band were out partying and being rock stars, Patton sat in his hotel room, screaming, farting, laughing, yelping and barking into a cheap microphone and recording the results on a Tascam 4-track recorder. He then spliced up those recordings, re-edited bits and pieces together, and processed them into these bizarre, unsettling compositions with titles like I Killed Him Like a Dog and He Still Laughed, and Butterfly in a Glass Maze. Overall, it's not an easy listen and, for most people, will be pretty much impossible to stand for more than a few minutes, but it's an interesting snapshot in the evolution of one of the most respected vocalists alive today. Generally regarded as one of the worst albums of all time, Lou Reed's Metal Machine Music was a shock to the system for any listener expecting another Sally Can't Dance, and continues to divide opinion to this day. In 1975, Lou Reed was a successful solo artist in his own right, signed to a major label and generally doing pretty well. So, as any self-respecting artist would do, Reed decided to record a double LP of nothing but guitar feedback and effects pedals. Some speculated that he only did it to fulfill a contractual obligation with his record label. But Reed has always been a fan and student of all things avant-garde, having previously been involved with composer Lamonte Young through John Cale, and so his heart lay in the world of the experimental. Metal Machine Music presents 4 15 to 16 minute long compositions created using 2 guitars positioned against amplifiers, each droning frequency colliding with the next and forming waves of undulating sound. There are no real melodies, rhythms, or anything we would normally associate with music as we know it. Instead, we find walls of noise, galaxies of delayed lines of feedback and fret noise, intertwined with overtones and screeching harmonics. Some fans even returned the record to the shop they bought it in, believing that it was broken or damaged somehow, only to be told that, no, this cacophony is actually what you've just paid for. While the album is essentially noise, it's not harsh or particularly abrasive like a lot of modern noise music. It's almost meditative in its own way, focusing your attention on the overall soundscape rather than individual sounds as a chaotic sonic ocean ebbs and flows around your ears. Reed's love of drones and sustained tones are evident as the waves of feedback dance together, creating polyrhythms and complex oscillations. Metal machine music was almost universally panned, but some, such as Reed's biographer Victor Bockris, proclaimed it to be the ultimate conceptual punk album. In its complete rejection of conventional structures, melodies, rhythms and forms, Lou Reed opened up a sonic Pandora's box which would go on to influence countless artists over the coming decades, especially the next artist in our list. Merzbow is a Japanese noise artist who's been active since the late 1970s. With over 400 releases on various labels throughout the world, Merzbow is arguably the most prolific artist around, even if 99% of his music is considered to be unlistenable by the vast majority of people. With an artist like Masami Akita, there are plenty of choices when it comes to weird albums. Whether it be the Merzbox, a 50 CD set encased in black rubber, or the lo-fi magazine cut-ups of pornography and manga from his earlier tape releases, Merzbow rarely does anything conventionally. However, in 1994, while working with the Releasing Eskimo label, Merzbow released a very special edition of the album Noise Embryo. So special, in fact, that only one copy was ever released. The head of the label owned an old, dilapidated Mercedes-Benz, which the police had told him they would remove if he didn't shift it. So rather than letting a good car go to waste, he decided to rig up the stereo to automatically play Noise Embryo as soon as it was started, and then wouldn't stop. Ever. Renamed Merzcar, the label owner put the car up for sale as a unique piece of art, hoping to make the best of a bad situation and possibly making a few quid on the side. Unfortunately, the car went unsold and eventually broke down and had to be given away, but it was a funny idea anyway. Noise Embryo was released around the same time as one of my favourite Merzbow albums, Pulse Demon, and utilises the same pre-laptop era harshness, recorded to digital rather than analogue like most of his pre-1990s recordings. Extreme volumes, jarring rhythms, and frequencies so intense you can physically feel them are at the heart of Merzbow's work, and this album is a perfect example of his unique style. One of the most unique and interesting bands around, the Residents have been responsible for some of the most bizarre and entertainingly absurd music to have ever been released. Best known for their trademark outfit of a top hat, tails and a gigantic eyeball for a head, the Residents have never been your average band. In 1976, the band released the third Reich and Roll on Ralph Records. Clocking in at around 35 minutes, the album consists of the Residents doing their own very weird, very idiosyncratic cover versions of various pop songs from the 1960s. Occasionally, the songs would be recognisable, but more often than not, they were turned into these odd reinterpretations with vocals more similar to a drunk lounge singer than a 60s pop group. In some cases, the band played 2 or 3 different songs at the exact same time, thus obscuring them further and causing all sorts of confusion when it comes to figuring out what's going on. Oboes honk, voices moan, a piano gets thrown down a staircase somewhere, and a saxophone bleats in the distance like a reverberated goat in distress. Recorded using a 4-track tape recorder, the band started out by taking the track they wanted to cover and then playing over the top of the original. Gradually, as they added tracks and bounced down the mix, they removed the original track and left their own skeletal renditions in its place. The results are very, very peculiar and chaotic, but also very, very funny, as the band take an almost Picasso-like approach to cover versions. The title and the cover artwork were the cause of some controversy, since the Residents were making a satirical comment on what they saw as the fascistic behaviours of the pop industry and record labels. Initially, the cover featured American Bandstand host Dick Clark, dressed up in a Nazi uniform, holding a carrot well surrounded by swastikas and a cross-dressing Hitler who appeared to be dancing around him. Eventually, later releases would have exaggerated censored stickers over the offending words and symbols, but the songs themselves remained the same, and the residents would continue to tread their own path for the next 40 plus years. For 8 months during 1968, Don Van Vlie, better known as Captain Beefheart, effectively held a group of musicians hostage in a commune in Los Angeles until they learned to play, with absolute precision, 28 pieces of music that he had written on a piano in 8 hours, with no idea how to play a piano. Fortunately, drummer John French, better known as Drumbo, had the musical chops to help Beefheart organise his sketches into semi-coherent pieces of music and provided basic notation for each musician. Although, on listening to this album for the first time, or even the 15th time, you'd be forgiven for thinking that it was all just made up on the spot. On the contrary, almost every track on the album was laid down in one 6-hour recording session after the aforementioned 8 months of intensive cult-like rehearsal. The band could play every song, note for note, live, and plenty of footage exists of them doing so. So although Troutmask Replica sounds chaotic and disordered, it's actually a unique piece of art and one which has come to be seen as a work of creative genius. Don Van Vlie was a complicated character who rarely followed the rules. Notoriously difficult to work with, even his childhood friend and the producer of the album, Frank Zappa, took a back seat and just let Don do whatever he wanted. For example, during the recording of the album, Don refused to track his vocals while monitoring the mix through headphones, as is typical when you're recording in a studio. Instead, he recorded while only hearing the playback bleed through the glass in the studio. So as a result, most of his vocals are out of sync with the rest of the track. This is just one example of the unconventional, often deliberately awkward approaches he would take to music over the coming decades. Troutmask Replica is a unique piece of art which sounds as fresh today as it did in 1969. And that's saying something because it still sounds like it was recorded using 2 old tape decks. It's a difficult, frustrating, and even infuriating listen, but it's worth sticking with it until it actually clicks and you understand why it sounds the way it does. It's musical sculpture, and I highly recommend checking it out. Well, I hope you enjoyed that wee list of weird albums and found some new musical avenues to explore. If you feel the need to clear your house of unwanted party guests, please check out any of these titles and save them to your playlist. It's always handy to have some harsh noise or avant-garde vocal acrobatics at your disposal. Anyhow, till next time, keep it weird.